Hello YouTube, welcome back to the channel. So I want to show you something, just so you can see for yourself. I don't know if you can make that out. See that? That means it's late night or early in the morning, depending on your persuasion. And what's funny is I actually forgot to charge my Apple Watch, and I usually use it to set my alarm and to adjust everything. So while it's charging, I've decided I'm going to record this video. So you're getting late night and ornery Carlos, because under normal circumstances I'd already be in bed sleeping right now. So the only reason I'm actually making this video, because I already recorded a video tonight and uploaded it, and I'm going to decide if this one's going to make the cut and get put onto YouTube probably at sometime in the morning if I decide to put it up. To be honest, I'm probably inclined to do it, given that I've already gone through the trouble of setting up the camera. So here's the thing. I made a video the other day, which was the behind the card movie review. Now, from the relative terms of the channel, it was a hit. It took off and did very well, which is great. It's always gratifying when one of the videos does well. And I got a lot of tremendous feedback on it, so it was a lot of fun to be able to kind of see people's different opinions on it and kind of talk back and forth with them a little bit. Obviously, it's a bit of a mixed bag. And one of the things that I was happy with is that a number of people felt like it was at least a reasonably unbiased review, in the sense that I didn't specifically go in with a preconceived notion, and I went out of my way to do that. And I also tried my best at making sure I gave at least some credit or some praise in it. And specifically what I tried to focus on, because it was the easiest for me to do, was that I tried to focus on the cinematography, the editing, because the movie itself looked pretty clean. Now, the only reason I'm making a kind of a follow-up video on this is that as I was publishing that other video, the one that came on the channel, and I hate the idea of cannibalizing the other one because I felt the other one was good. It was a Brett Favre showcase to go along with also basically talking through kind of a set collecting philosophy. So it's one of those videos that I like to make. It's a little bit of a combination of two things. But I noticed in the evening, as I was uploading the video and getting everything set up, I started to notice a little notification thing on the side of the YouTube, because I had it open. And as I was looking at it, it seemed like some comments were being made, which is great. I decided to take a look at it just because I want to see if there's anything I'm going to reply to, probably in the morning. So I click on it, and I'm noticing a couple of different comments from the same name, kind of talking about the review and the film, and encouraging people to watch it. Now, here's the thing: I didn't know this name. And as it keeps doing it and as it keeps replying, I was noticing that it was kind of encouraging people to watch the film. So after more than a couple, and I'm being serious about this, when I saw it a couple of times, I'm like, okay, so is somebody kind of just spamming this thing? And because to be fair, this movie review was like 8, 9, 10 days ago. It's not like last week. It's not like this week. It's been a little bit now. Like I said, the video did well, and it's still on the channel, getting a couple of views here and there. But for the most part, it's run its course as far as conventional YouTube. Usually the views are at their maximum in that early phase. So like I said, it did well for me, so it was great. And some of the people found the channel and decided to subscribe, so it was successful from that regard. But the thing was, I kept seeing this commenter. And then eventually the commenter finally made a statement during one of the replies that says, "You and Carlos," replying to one of the commenters here, have obviously done no research on me, the director, and how and let me make sure I read this right, and how I card collect. Hope you watch the film versus just taking Carlos's review as fully accurate. Now, I also did some digging into one of the other reviews that I saw, and he had also left a bunch of comments in that one as well, talking about the inaccuracy of it. Now, in fairness, in the other one, he said he was between 50 and 90% inaccurate. It just says as fully accurate. So apparently I'm a little more accurate than the other review in question. But I found this very interesting. Now, what happened is, during one of the comments later, because there were a number of different comments, and I just want to make sure I read it correctly. So I'm trying to read it from the screen, sorry, at the same time that I'm talking to you. So it just says, pretty wild up and down review of my film. So I'm quoting this from the comment section. It's actually a pinned comment, so you should be able to see it if you check out that review. Shocked that you end every section reviewed with "the film is trash," which, by the way, is trash. Even though you loved how it was shot, which I tried to give credit for the cinematography, like I just said. You had a good laugh throughout. I did, but I'll get to that in a second. It's entertaining, and you get the Card 101 content in areas. Not sure how you like so much of a movie, but call it trash. It's actually very easy, and I kind of explained in the review, but I'll reiterate it in a second. Now here's the piece. Happy to be on your next YouTube video to discuss all the issues you had about my film, so I can answer them from the director's point of view for your audience. Okay. Now, in addition, I also had them reach out by Instagram. So I'll read you pieces, because again, I'm going to leave out some other information here, because I was given a couple of contact informations, and you're going to see in a moment why I'm recording this rather than deciding to take them up on this offer. And I'll explain myself a little bit more so here in a moment. So anyway, basically just kind of reiterating the same thing, almost verbatim what we just had there. So here, pretty bold statement to push your followers to not watch the biggest film in the sports card market to date. Okay, stick with that. That will get more individuals to join the hobby that we are all supposed to love. Okay, now this is an interesting comment. And I'll read a little more here, but I'll come back to that comment here in a second. You should do your next YouTube video by interviewing me about the film so your audience can hear from me with feedback based on what you had issues with in your review of the film. Now, the first section of it, we could have a debate on it. And I tried to look past the next comment, but the next comment is basically an instruction. You should do your next YouTube video. Well, first of all, I already did a YouTube video in the time that you posted this. So you're already late in that, as far as that's concerned. And if you did your research, and another section here it basically suggests that he did some research. Well, if you did your research, sir, you would realize that, in fact, I do videos on a pretty regular basis. And you'll see why that would make no sense for my next YouTube video to yours, because you would be late. And I'll explain that again in a second. But again, just as a tip, giving people instructions and telling them what they should do is usually not the best way to get them to do something. Now, I did try to look past that. Because again, it was a bit of an unusual thing to have someone reach out in this way. So I just tried to look past it, and I basically decided to respond just to see. Now, to be fair, I'm going to be basically transparent with you. As soon as I hit enter on this, I immediately regretted it because I'm like, I actually don't want to do it. And I'll explain why here in a second, but it was like, you know what? I was kind of good. So anyway, I just said, all right, Chris, I'm intrigued, which I was. But again, by the time I hit enter on the whole comment, I kind of started to regret it almost immediately. And I said, I'll play along. And by the way, that is a key phrase. Just remember that. I'll play along. I can send a message that I contact, but when you're available to have the conversation. Basically, I wanted to see when, presumably, we could get this done if I was going to do it. The next comment exactly kind of plays into where I don't think he's approaching it from the right attitude. Again, giving instructions in the first section, not the best way to go about it, but the second one is actually worse. You should play along. Your views in the film review video were 7 times your normal views. So on the one hand, like I said, now you're getting late night ornery, Carlos. And when you post something like this, I'm like, Anyway, so I said you should play along. Your views on the film review video were 7 times your normal views. So on the one hand, I kind of appreciate that you presumably did a little bit of research. To be fair, the video before that was a Nat Turner one, so it's more like 4 times. But was it a successful video for this channel by the standards? Yes, it was a successful video by the standards. And was I intrigued? I was intrigued because I know there's going to be a lot of softball cream puff interviews forthcoming. So I thought, might be kind of interesting to do a little bit of a counter to that. But I'm going to tell you why, instead of doing that, I'm making this video. And why I've decided I'm probably not going to respond to this any further. And the reason for that is that although it is intriguing, basically what this person here, the director, did not fully understand, and the entire angle in which he took on this betrays a lack of understanding of what it is I'm actually doing on this channel. And the reason for that is because he presumed that because the video did well, that I would be naturally interested in having him on to get more views. And it would. I think it would honestly probably do well if I was to promote it and sell it from that perspective, and it would probably get more views. But on the other hand, it's also promotion for the film. Like, he would get the opportunity to kind of, defend, his film from my critiques. And say why they were unfair or whatever. But the point is, it would still be a promotional vehicle for the film, in addition to other interviews and things he's going to do. Which, by the way, in and of itself is fine. But where I have a problem with it is this premise that, because it did well view-wise, therefore, I should be glad to have him on. And I'm sitting there like, you are taking a very bad approach to this. Because first you try to suggest you should do your next YouTube video by interviewing me. So, to be clear, you're asking me to interview you. I didn't reach out to you. As far as I was concerned, I was done with this film. I did my review. You don't have to agree with my review. To be clear, you don't have to agree with my review at all. But I'm not asking anything of you. I didn't reach out to you. You did multiple responses in my comment section and then reached out to me on Instagram. So who is asking what of whom? And I'm not saying this to be mean. I'm just saying, like, I'm saying take this as a critique, take this under advisement. This is not a great approach to reach out to people to try to get, if you disagree with them, you disagree with them. But at the same time, you're trying to promote it. Now, the other piece I took exception to, like actually the piece that I took more exception to be honest with you, is this premise here. Pretty bold statement to push your followers to not watch the biggest film in the sports card market to date. So what the hell does that mean? There aren't a lot of sports card market films in the first place. So it's like, so what? Congratulations? I guess. Okay, sure. That will get more individuals to join the hobby they're all supposed to love. I don't care if more people join the hobby. Again, I'm not saying this to be mean. I genuinely don't care. I have no interest or stake whatsoever in more people joining the hobby. If they do, great. If they don't, fine. The thing is, like I said, for part of it, you kind of allude to almost like having done a little bit of research on the channel, at least looking. And you basically looked far enough to see view counts on a couple of videos, and then you extrapolated from there. So at least you did that far. Well, maybe you should watch a couple of my videos, and what you're going to realize is that I am genuinely not concerned in the slightest when it comes to the hobby, and when it comes to a lot of elements of the hobby. I'm very laissez-faire, which is to say that I am very comfortable with the way that it operates. If people decide to get out of it for good reasons, I'm good with that. If people decide to come into it, I'm good with that. I'm not the guy who's concerned about, investors in the hobby or collectors in the hobby or the ratios of these two things, because at the end of the day, people can come and go for whatever reason they please. People can participate in things for whatever reason they please. They can go attend shows if they want to. They can buy stuff online if they want to. They can do none of the above if they want to. All these things are fine. I leave it to other people to get upset or concerned about all these things. I have friends that are in the industry, and I want them to do well. But at the same time, if having an out-of-date film is supposed to be the vehicle by which we promote the hobby, 6 months to a year too late, that is basically a fluff piece for the industry to try to prop it up, when again, you pick like the fourth best grader, the 47th best grader at best, to represent that segment, a couple of random dealers, great. Jeff Wilson, who is a big influencer in the space, let's be fair about that. And then at the same time, Vegas Dave for notoriety, ? Steve Aoki for celebrity factor, ? And then Brad the Comeback Card Investor representing one element of the influencers. And this is supposed to be the grand film that is supposed to represent the hobby. I'm like, if this is supposed to be what I'm supposed to be rooting for to help the hobby, it's like, let it burn. Let it burn to the damn ground. Who cares? Like, seriously. Probably, 3 a.m. ornery Carlos talking. But, like, realistically, why on earth would I give a crap if the hobby does well or doesn't do well on the basis of this film? I'm serious when I say this. I said it earlier, but I'm going to repeat it one more time. I was done with this film. The video's already shot. It was done. I've done my back and forth with folks in the comments. Did all that. I had no interest in discussing this film in any way, shape, or form ever again. And the reason why I'm not going to follow up in contact is that I'm not interested in doing a promotional vehicle for you. Even if it would be us just arguing, which would probably do well from a view perspective, I don't need additional views on the channel. It's not of interest to me. It's not appealing enough to me, because at the end of the day, that's not what I'm doing this for. I do want people to see the channel. I do want people to watch the videos, and hopefully they get something out of it. That I hope. But outside of that, people can do whatever they want. I've seen a lot of content that's really bad, it's garbage, that does very well. I see other content that I think is quite good, and no one watches it. And like, it is what it is. The only thing we can do is try to promote the content we think is good, and not talk, and basically ignore, or not, at least not add or try to additionally promote content that we don't think is great. So that's the best we can do. That's really, in all honesty, that's what any of us can do, myself or anybody else. That's the best we can do. We can try to at least give recommendations to the best of our ability, and then let the audience figure out whether they like it or they don't like it. If hopefully nobody is taking anything I do review-wise verbatim, I did try to give my reasons why, and I'm going to reiterate a couple of reasons why. The information in it was out of date, because he seemed to be very confused. And like I said, I read the piece where he was giving his commentary, and he was confused how I could find certain elements of it funny and entertaining, and I'm putting that in quotation marks for a reason, and I'll come back to it, how I could find it entertaining and still not recommend the film. I found it entertaining the same way that people like disaster movies. Are we rooting for people to die? Is that the, because we're still getting entertainment from this, but at the same time, it's like, it's more of a visceral reaction to it. I was listening to really dumb things being said, and I laughed. I laughed a number of different times. And again, maybe I was too nice in my review. Maybe that's the problem, where it's sending a bit of a mixed message. So if it's not completely clear, let me reiterate. I found certain elements of it funny because they were absurd. I found certain elements of it funny because they did not represent a broad spectrum of the hobby very well. They represented kind of a one-sided spectrum. And when you try to represent the other side of it, you overcorrected. Vegas Dave was just very pessimistic on the hobby because it fits his narrative. And he basically just wanted to pat himself on the back with it, which is fine. That's completely okay. That's his deal. But you also had a bunch of other people who, I guess, were arguing the other side of it and were basically clueless. Rob G has a lot of money. He has been able to acquire some amazing cards. So from a collecting standpoint, from the physical possession of these cards, very impressive. He is not a student of the game yet. He could certainly be on his way to being there. But like in and of itself, he is not the first person or the 57th person or 557th person that I would go to on knowledge in the hobby. He's a guy who has money and has learned how to spend it. Steve Aoki is a guy who may enjoy the hobby. I'm not going to argue one way or the other on that. But he is a neophyte in the hobby. Jeff Wilson operates a business in the hobby, and he's still a neophyte in the hobby. He'll make videos where he says stuff that flat out is wrong. Because he doesn't know. He just doesn't know. And that's not a crime. That's okay. But again, he's one of your experts. Because he is at least somewhat more knowledgeable than some of these other folks in there. The guy from Got Baseball Cards, he's at least been in the industry a long time. So I'll give him some points for that. But then you've got the athletes who, you had Josh Jacobs who didn't even know that his card didn't come already holdered inside of a Beckett holder. You had Steve Aoki promoting HGA. You had Brad the Comeback Card Investor who hasn't made a video in 6 months. He's barely involved. At this point, the thing was obsolete before we opened the box. Again, we can get ironic entertainment from it. If that's our objective here, that's fine. One more point I'm going to make on this, because I didn't really emphasize this on the first one. My biggest issue of contention of it isn't that no one should ever watch this film ever, ever, ever. That was never my argument. My argument is that I'm also taking into account that you have to pay for it. And that makes a difference. Because if this was a documentary that you had made, a 45-minute documentary, and you had stuck it on a YouTube channel, I'd be like, okay, you know what, check it out. Check it out for a lark, go take a look at it and see if you like it, one way or the other. My critique, and also the way I would perceive it, comparatively to what it is, would have to change a little bit, because my expectation level would have to be a little bit different, because I wouldn't be expecting as much of a high budget, high concept. And I'm not negating that it incurred a cost, very clearly travel costs. And again, it was slickly produced and well edited, and it looked good. So I am not taking away the effort. I'm not taking away the time that was put into it. I'm not taking away the amount of energy, and no doubt the creative energy that was put into this task. I'm not trying to diminish it, but at the same time, the output is still not worth the money to me as a viewer. Aside from the fact that my entertainment, and I'm going to reemphasize this, my entertainment of it came from the absurdity of it. I was genuinely curious, and once I watched it, I gave my critique, I gave my opinion. People can disagree with my opinion or agree with my opinion, but I gave an opinion and I explained my reasons why. And my reasons were not inconsistent, because I think where you struggled, Mr. Director Man, is that you actually believed that I was being inconsistent. I was not. I was very clear where I got my entertainment from. I was very clear why I did not think that was worthwhile for me to recommend it to people to actually spend money. Because when you're asking someone's money, then our standard has to be higher. I also knew that once I watched it, I was going to make a review on it. And where you need to be clear on this, and I'll read it and I'll make it as clear as I can right now. If the movie had been good, I would have said it was good. If the movie was informative, I would have said it was informative. The idea that it was Card 101 content is wonderful, but I'm not charging for Card 101 content. I can get Card 101 content on YouTube for free. For free. And there are a number of people that are more than qualified to deliver that if that's what we're doing. If we're doing Card 101 content, then we don't need your movie for that. If that's what we're getting out of it. If we're getting a time capsule of 2020, we don't even need your movie for that. So what happens is I slowly have to strip away all the elements of it. And what I come to is, what purpose does this serve? And this is maybe where the confusion was as well. Because I'm looking at it in comparison to the information included in it. Not great. That's what I'm calling trash. You don't have to agree with me, but I think the information was trash because it was out of date basically the moment it came out. In addition to, the information I would have argued was incorrect at the time it was uttered, a lot of it. And we can debate on that, but truthfully, we're probably not going to. But at the end of the day, anybody that's watching it, their entertainment is going to have to be from the absurdity perspective. Because if you are familiar with the hobby, you're just going to chuckle. If that was your objective, if you were trying to intentionally be like a parody of the sports card hobby, well then fair enough. I'll leave you all with kind of this analogy. This will be maybe the best one I can do for you. And you guys can Google some of this stuff if you're not familiar with it. So there was a TV show that was called Mystery Science Theater 3000. Some of you may be familiar with it. It was basically the premise being that you had these puppets and this guy that was trapped in a spaceship that basically was condemned to watch terrible movies. And the idea was that these were legitimately bad films, for the most part. And a lot of times it was the entertainment would come from them spoofing and riffing off of the film and making fun of it, basically, is what it was. And there were some truly awful films that went through there that basically were unwatchable, aside from the fact that they had that riff element to it added onto it. And some of them would go on to continue making riff tracks. I think Riff Tracks is the name of one of them, of different movies. And one of the most infamous ones, one of my personal favorites from that infamy standpoint, was a movie called Manos, the Hands of Fate. Now, Manos, the Hands of Fate, again, you can Google it if you want to, was a terrible film that was made, I think, in the 60s. And it was made on like an absolute shoestring budget. The acting was terrible. The filming was terrible. Everything about it was garbage. Now, here's the thing. Coming back to that entertainment point from earlier. The thing about entertainment is that entertainment is subjective. And what can entertain you and entertain me may differ. And I think, like I said, I think the director got confused is that when I watched this film, I was entertained. As I said, I got entertained because every time I heard something ridiculous, I laughed. And I spent a lot of time laughing because I heard a lot of ridiculous things. So I still got entertainment from it. Does that mean that I'm going to recommend somebody pay for this? No, I'm not. No. But if they still want to, they certainly can. But I want to make sure they at least understood what they were getting into. Now, the thing is, with the Manos, the Hands of Fate, is it was a legitimately bad film. The problem was that it was trying to act as kind of a dramatic or slash horror film. And that's what it was going for. In that sense, it was a miserable failure. It was absolutely atrocious in every possible conceivable way. But as unintentional comedy, it turned out to be a tremendous fodder. It got a second life and gained a cult following because it was so bad. It was so bad that it was mercilessly mocked, and then it suddenly became more popular as a joke than it ever was as a serious film. That's a completely different... The intention of the director was not to make a joke. It was not to make it an unintentional comedy. They intended to make a serious film. That was their objective. That was their goal. They failed. But they made an unintentional comedy that ended up becoming a cult classic. Now, I'm not suggesting that this film is Manos, the Hands of Fate for the sports card hobby, but I think where we have a major disconnect, and really it comes down to that comment that I read earlier. I think there's a disconnect in the thought or the expectation of what this film actually is. And the problem is that I don't understand what the film is supposed to be. But if I take this comment at face value, the biggest film in the sports card market to date that will get more individuals to join the hobby that we're all supposed to love. Based on that statement, it sounds to me like it is supposed to be a promotional piece for the hobby. It is supposed to be like a showcase piece to give an impression. So the 101 segments make a little bit more sense. The little built-in infomercials make a little bit more sense because it's supposed to be this educational thing to get people into the hobby itself, to teach them enough about it, to whet their appetite and get them interested in participating. The problem is the information is out of date. And that's the best I can say about it. But a lot of it is just flat out bad information. So as a result of it being bad information and being delivered by people who really don't know what they're talking about, it is a horrific misrepresentation of the hobby. It's basically a lie. And when that's what you're presenting, why would I want to bring in additional people on the basis of a lie? That doesn't seem to be like a good cause. That doesn't seem like a good thing. And like I said earlier, it would have been intriguing to potentially bring in the director to discuss some of these elements. I think that's probably a bridge we wouldn't be able to cross. Because he began with the premise that I would have any interest in quote-unquote promoting the hobby. I don't. I do a YouTube channel on sports cards, but it is not my job or my goal to promote the hobby. I want the hobby to succeed or fail on its own merits. I want it to do what it's going to do. I want people to learn by participating. And if they don't want to participate and they find this isn't for them, I want them to understand that and leave. Not out of meanness, not out of spite. I just want them to find what works for them or makes it happy for them. If this hobby fits that, then I welcome you. And if it doesn't, thank you for giving it a try and best of luck in finding what's going to work for you. That is my view of the hobby. It's not my job to recruit anybody. It's also not my job to drive anybody away. But this movie is a false representation of what the hobby is. Because even at the moment it came out, it was based on false pretenses, and a lot of folks that were no business to have that discussion they were having as part of this movie. And if it's supposed to be a promotional vehicle, then it's not a good one. Then it is Manos and Hands of Fate attempting to be serious when it probably serves better as a spoof. That might be me. But like I said, you got 3 a.m. ornery Carlos, so maybe don't approach it that way, and maybe you get slightly nicer Carlos. There probably isn't a nicer Carlos. That's probably about the best you're gonna get. That's probably the best you're gonna do. Anyway, so that's it for me. If this makes the YouTube channel, hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you got something out of it. I'd like to get your thoughts. I'd like to get your comments. Let me actually ask you a couple questions. First one. Do you think I should have actually tried to get the director on? One other thing actually that bothered me about it was that unfortunately, because of, like I said, the scheduling and timing thing, it would have been at least well into next week before we would have been able to get something together. Like, I got other stuff I want to do, man. Like I said, I never even wanted to make a second video on this godforsaken movie. So here's my recommendation. If you really want to watch it and you got $6 to burn, knock yourself out. Have fun. I think it's $6. I don't even know. $5.99, $4.99, something. It's like $5-6. If you really want to watch the damn thing, go ahead. But don't say they didn't warn you. Otherwise, if you've got an hour and 40 minutes of your life that you want to retain and not regret at the end of your life, save yourself. Don't do it. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your money. And if it causes people to leave the hobby, then so be it. Maybe we'll be able to get cheaper cards. So rejoice us all. My second question actually is, do you know of any other hobby-related movies? Now, I'm actually kind of curious. You know, basically, I guess we're grading on a curve. If presumably this is, you know, the biggest sports card hobby movie of all time, I'm kind of curious what other ones there were. I feel like there was one at the time of the boom. It was, you know, it's kind of crummy, but I guess by virtue of that, it's the best one, or at least the biggest one. I'm kind of curious now. Is there another one? Anyway, so comments in the comment section. If you guys want to chime in with anything, I'd be happy to reply back to those. Otherwise, more videos coming up on the channel because we do videos more often. We're not waiting for people to schedule things. Although I am scheduling some things in the next little bit here with some folks that I do want to talk to. So we're going to do that. Also live stream, 8 p.m. Eastern time, because now apparently I made a second video inside of a couple of hours because of people. Like if you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much. We'll catch you in the next one.